Welcome to the Midnight Codex, where forgotten truths breathe and shadows tell their tale. Tonight, don't blink and don't look behind you.
I don't know why I agreed to this. Maybe it was the money, or maybe I was just too desperate. But whatever the reason, I can't shake this feeling. Something's waiting for me here. Something wrong. My name is Alex Parker, 32 years old, unemployed, and more desperate than I've ever been. My life had been a routine of bad decisions and even worse luck. I used to have a decent job, nothing glamorous, just a desk job in a small tech company, but after the layoffs, I was left with a stack of bills and a useless degree. The relationship with my girlfriend, Lisa, had been falling apart for months, and soon enough, I found myself living in a crumbling apartment I could barely afford. So when the curator called, offering me a job as a night security guard for an ancient, isolated temple, I didn't hesitate. The pay was enough to get me back on my feet for a while, maybe even save me from sinking further into debt. The temple was remote, hidden deep in the mountains far from anyone's eyes. And the job? Simple enough. Watch over the place for a few nights. No one expected anything more, or so I thought. I was stupid to think it would be that easy. Now that I'm here, standing at the entrance of the temple, I feel like something's watching me. I can't explain it, but the weight of this place presses down on me, like it's alive. There's a chill in the air, even though the weather's mild. A thick, unsettling silence hangs over everything. I can't help but feel that I'm not alone, that something's waiting for me in the darkness. The temple looms before me, half buried under the shadow of the mountain, its twisted, inverted architecture almost mocking the natural world. Its structure feels unnatural, like it was built to defy the laws of physics, as if it were meant to be something other than what it is. My mind races with thoughts of ancient rituals, forgotten gods, and curses I don't believe in, but can't help but be scared of. I walked closer, each step dragging me deeper into the strange atmosphere surrounding the place. The entrance was an arched doorway, dark as the inside of a cave. My flashlight flickered, casting shadows that seemed to stretch and twist in unnatural ways. A figure emerged from the shadows, old, thin, with pale eyes that glinted in the dim light. The curator, the man who'd hired me. He seemed distant, tired, but there was a strange urgency in his voice when he spoke. 4 rules, he said, his words slow, deliberate. Follow them, and you'll be fine. Break them, and you won't leave. He handed me a folded piece of yellowed paper. I looked at the words on the paper, barely processing them as I scanned through the rules. Never step inside the temple before sunset. Keep the torches burning at all times, or the shadows will grow too strong. If you hear footsteps behind you, never turn around. Leave the temple before dawn, or it will claim you. I raised an eyebrow at the absurdity of it. But when I looked up at the curator, there was no smile, no sign of a joke. Just that look in his eyes. His pale gaze was steady, unwavering. He turned and walked back into the shadows without another word, leaving me standing there, holding the paper. I checked my watch. The sun had just set. Rule 1. Don't step inside before sunset. I was safe for now, but the weight of the rules gnawed at me. The place felt wrong, suffocating. It wasn't just the dim light or the ancient stone that made it feel off. It was the air. It felt heavy, oppressive, like the temple itself was alive, watching me, waiting for me to make a mistake. I moved deeper into the temple, my footsteps echoing off the stone floors. The torches flickered at the edges of the hallway, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch toward me, twisting like fingers reaching from the darkness. The deeper I walked, the more the silence pressed in on me. It wasn't peaceful. This wasn't a quiet place. It was a place that felt like it was waiting for something or someone. Rule 2. Keep the torches burning. I stopped and checked the nearest one, making sure the flame was steady. The shadows here were unnerving, as if the darkness itself wanted to swallow the light. I didn't want to risk it, not yet. The hallway stretched on, twisting and turning in ways that made it feel like I was moving in circles, yet the temple never ended. The walls were covered in carvings, cryptic symbols I couldn't make sense of. The air grew colder, and I started to feel watched. I was never one to believe in ghosts or curses, but standing here, in this place, I couldn't shake the feeling that something ancient and malevolent was alive in the walls. A sound echoed behind me, soft, barely audible at first, a faint scratching, like something moving across the stone. I froze. Rule 3. If you hear footsteps behind you, never turn around. My breath caught in my throat. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. The footsteps came again, closer this time. I told myself it was nothing, just my imagination. But the fear that twisted in my gut said otherwise. I stood still for a moment, paralyzed by the rule. The footsteps continued, growing closer, but I couldn't bring myself to turn. But then, something pulled at me. A need to know, a need to understand. I spun around, almost without thinking. There was nothing, only darkness, but there at the far end of the hall, something shifted. A figure, a shape. It looked like me, but distorted. Its eyes were hollow black pits, and its grin stretched unnaturally wide. My breath stopped. My heart pounded in my chest. The figure took a step toward me, and I felt my knees go weak. Then, as quickly as it appeared, it was gone, vanished into the shadows. I blinked, trying to shake the image from my mind. My head spun. The fear twisted inside me. I couldn't tell if it was real or just my mind playing tricks on me. But the fear was real. I couldn't explain what had happened. I stood there for what felt like hours, my mind racing. The place was alive in a way I couldn't grasp. The walls shifted, the shadows grew deeper, and I couldn't tell what was real anymore. The rules, their weight grew heavier with each step. Am I trapped here? I wondered. Is this just some twisted test? The question echoed in my mind as I moved further into the temple. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know what I'd walked into, but I could feel it. Something ancient, something dark had claimed this place, and now it had claimed me. The silence inside the temple was almost unbearable. My footsteps echoed through the vast empty hallways, each one louder than the last. I had been walking for what felt like hours, but it seemed as if I hadn't moved an inch. The walls closed in, but not in a physical way. No, it was more like the air itself was growing heavier, thicker. Every corner I turned, the darkness seemed to press closer, suffocating me. I had to keep moving. I had to keep busy. The rules were simple enough, but the more I tried to follow them, the more I felt like I was walking into something, waiting for me. I reached the first torch, its light flickering weakly in the oppressive air. I checked it again, though I knew it was fine. Rule number 2. Keep the torches burning at all times, or the shadows will grow too strong. I wasn't sure what that meant, but there was a creeping dread that told me not to question it. I passed through another long corridor, the stone beneath my feet feeling like it was shifting with each step. The air felt thick, almost damp, and I could taste the dust in the back of my throat. The further I went, the more isolated I felt, like I was cut off from the world. There was no sign of the curator, no indication that anyone else was here. It was just me and the temple, and whatever it was hiding. Every inch of this place felt wrong. The walls were covered in strange symbols, none of which I recognized. Some were familiar, like old languages I'd seen in history books, but most of them were warped, twisted, as though they had been etched by something otherworldly. The deeper I ventured, the more the air itself seemed to pulse with energy, vibrating under my skin. It wasn't just the shadows. The temple felt like it was alive. I stopped for a moment to gather myself, my heart hammering in my chest. The rule about the torches seemed absurd. Was the temple really so old, so powerful, that a simple torch could keep the darkness at bay? The idea felt far-fetched, but then I remembered the curator's eyes. Those hollow eyes. He wasn't joking. I walked past a row of statues, their faces worn and weathered, but there was something about them that made me uneasy. They were too lifelike. Their eyes seemed to follow me. I couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't just statues, but something else, something watching. Then I heard it again, a soft scuffling sound, just like before. My body froze. I had learned to trust my instincts, but this felt wrong. The noise wasn't just behind me anymore. It was coming from all around me. It was as if the shadows themselves were moving, shifting to take shape. The torches flickered again, casting erratic, jerky shadows that danced along the walls, stretching and reaching. Don't turn around, I thought. The rule echoed in my mind like a mantra. But my feet were already moving. The sound wasn't going away. If anything, it was getting closer. I had to know. I spun around, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, but there was nothing there. Just the same cold stone and empty space. But then, I saw it. At the far end of the hall, standing motionless in the shadows, was a figure. It was too dark to make out clearly, but it was tall, too tall. Its form was indistinct, but its presence, it felt wrong. It was as if the darkness had shaped itself into something human, but only just. A distorted reflection, like an incomplete sketch. I couldn't see its face, but I could feel its eyes on me, burning through the gloom. I swallowed, my throat dry. My heartbeat was the loudest thing in the temple now, thudding in my ears. My mind screamed at me to run, but my feet stayed rooted to the ground. I was paralyzed. And then, it moved. The figure stepped forward, slowly, deliberately, until it was closer. I could hear its footsteps now, faint but distinct, scraping against the stone. I wanted to turn and flee, but my legs wouldn't respond. I couldn't move. I was stuck, trapped by the darkness, by the thing that seemed to be pulling me in. In a flash, it was gone. The air grew cold, and for a moment, I thought I'd imagined the whole thing. But my body told me otherwise. The fear gnawed at my insides, a pit opening up in my stomach. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Had I really seen it, or was it just my mind playing tricks on me, the shadows warping into something I feared? I didn't know anymore, but I had to get out of here. I couldn't stay in this place any longer. I ran. My heart pounded as my footsteps echoed through the hallways, faster now, each stride frantic, desperate. But no matter how fast I moved, it felt like the temple was closing in on me, the walls bending, warping around me. I turned another corner and found myself back at the same hallway I'd just left. The same statues, the same doorways. Time didn't make sense anymore. The minutes seemed to stretch, but I was no closer to finding an exit. Every turn led me deeper into the heart of the temple, and with each step, the feeling of being watched grew stronger. The temple was alive. It was pulling me in, trapping me in its maze. I paused to catch my breath, leaning against one of the walls. I felt dizzy, disoriented. The rules were supposed to protect me, weren't they? But the more I followed them, the more I felt like I was being drawn into something inevitable. Something that didn't want me to leave. I glanced at my watch. There was no way it was that late. But the time was wrong. The hands were spinning too fast, like the temple itself was playing tricks on me. My head was spinning, and I couldn't tell if I was trapped in time or just trapped in my own mind. Leave before dawn, or it will claim you. The last rule. It was the one I feared the most. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was already too late. I couldn't help myself. Despite the rules, despite the warnings, my curiosity got the better of me. The urge to understand. What was this place? What was it doing to me? Was too strong to resist. It was nearing sunset, but the temple felt different. The shadows stretched longer than they should have, and the temperature dropped so quickly that I could see my breath in the air. It was as if the very building was aware of the moment when I might finally lose control. I stood in the entrance hall, the ancient stone archway before me feeling more like a threshold to another world than just the doorway to an old temple. Something deep inside urged me to wait, to respect the rules. But the temptation to step forward, to step into the unknown, was overpowering. I took a step inside, and the world around me seemed to shift. At first, I thought it was a trick of my mind. But then the gravity, it changed. The floor beneath my feet felt wrong, as though it were pulling me toward it, like a magnetic force that I couldn't escape. My body swayed, struggling to keep balance as the walls began to twist and bend in impossible ways. The architecture of the temple, which had once seemed so alien but grounded, now moved. It shifted, as though the entire structure was rearranging itself around me. My head spun. The hallway stretched unnaturally long, the ceiling lowering and raising, the walls tilting at odd angles. The light from the torches flickered and sputtered out in an instant. I found myself standing in complete darkness. It wasn't just a lack of light. It was nothingness. The air was thick, suffocating, and I could feel the temperature drop so sharply that my skin prickled. It was as if the darkness itself was alive, closing in on me from all sides. I couldn't see my own hand in front of my face. And yet, in that endless black, I heard it again. The footsteps. Slow. Measured. Not my own. I should have remembered the rule. I should have ignored the sensation and kept my eyes forward. But my body moved before my mind could stop it. The temptation to look was overwhelming. The rule, never turn around, repeated in my head like a warning siren, but I couldn't resist. I turned. There, in the distance, just beyond the reach of the dimming torchlight, I saw it. The figure. That same shape from before, the one that wasn't me, but was me. Distorted. Its form was taller this time, stretching unnaturally in the dark. The grin, it was wider, more grotesque. Its eyes, hollow and empty, burned into me, cold and soulless. It was closer than before. I felt my breath catch in my throat. The fear was paralyzing. My body froze as the figure took another step, its silhouette shifting, melding with the shadows around it. It moved like liquid darkness, stretching out to reach me, and I could feel its presence in my chest, an unbearable weight pressing down on me. I wanted to run, to escape, but my feet remained glued to the ground. Every instinct screamed for me to move, to get out, but the figure's eyes held me in place, anchored me to the spot. I felt like I was sinking, pulled down into the depths of the temple itself. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, it was gone. The air grew cold. The oppressive weight lifted, if only slightly. But the terror didn't go away. It lingered, hanging thick in my mind, in the pit of my stomach. My hands were trembling as I stood there, alone in the dark. I had broken another rule. The atmosphere was different now. It was heavier, thicker, like the walls themselves were closing in on me. The shadows weren't just shadows anymore. They were alive. They moved, swirled around me as though they were observing me. Following my every move, with each step I took, the temple seemed to punish me. I could feel it, feel the building itself becoming more aware of me, of my presence, of my violation of its rules. The air grew thick with something I couldn't place, something ancient and oppressive. I felt the weight of it in my chest, in the pit of my stomach. I wanted to turn back. I wanted to run, but I was too far in now, too deep. The temple had already taken hold of me, and I could feel it tightening around me like a trap. The walls seemed to stretch longer with each step, the floor sinking beneath me, pulling me closer into its grasp. Every time I thought I was nearing the exit, the passageway would stretch further, twisting in on itself, leading me back into the heart of the temple. I couldn't escape. The fear was real. It wasn't just in my head anymore. It was in the air, in the very fabric of this place. I had violated the rules, and now I was paying the price. The temple was changing, and I could feel it breathing, shifting, living. I could feel its gaze on me. It wasn't human. Whatever force controlled this place was ancient, older than anything I could comprehend. And I was in its grasp. I stumbled forward, my heart racing, but every step seemed like a step deeper into something I couldn't escape. My thoughts were scattered, chaotic. The darkness felt thick, suffocating, like a living thing. I couldn't breathe properly. My head spun. My hands were clammy, slick with sweat, even though the air around me was cold, and the footsteps came again, closer, not behind me anymore, but all around me. I pressed my back to the wall, trying to steady my breath. Don't turn around. Don't look. Don't, but I couldn't stop myself. I spun on my heels, and there it was, closer than ever. The figure. Its grin was so wide I could see the sharp inhuman teeth gleaming in the dim torchlight. It was too close now, too real. I could feel its presence like a weight on my chest, a suffocating force. I couldn't move. I was trapped in place, paralyzed by fear, unable to do anything but stare at the figure that wasn't me, yet was me. It took another step forward. The air grew even colder, the shadows deepened, and then it whispered. A voice, not mine, not human. "You're remembering." The words echoed in my head, as if they came from all directions. I had no time to process them. I turned and ran, sprinting down the hall, feeling the walls shift and bend as I moved. The temple wasn't just a place, it was a living, breathing nightmare, and I was stuck inside it, trapped, unable to escape. I kept running. I didn't know where I was going. It didn't matter anymore. The shadows followed. The whispers followed. The temple wasn't just punishing me for breaking its rules. It was claiming me. And I could feel it. I couldn't tell what was real anymore. My mind was unraveling, slipping between reality and whatever the temple was doing to me. The shadows, they weren't just shadows. They moved. They slithered around me, curling and twisting in unnatural shapes. I could hear them whispering, too. The sound was soft at first, just a faint murmur, but it grew louder, clearer. The whispers weren't just from the air. They came from the walls, the stone, the very ground beneath my feet. They sounded like my voice. No, that wasn't right. They were my voice, but twisted, muffled. An echo of my own thoughts, only darker, more sinister. The words they spoke weren't my thoughts, not exactly, but they were familiar. Too familiar. "You're lost, Alex. You shouldn't have come. It's too late. You're already here." Each whisper, a shiver down my spine. Each whisper felt like it was creeping into my brain, scratching at the edges of my sanity. I tried to block it out, to tell myself it wasn't real, that I was just losing my mind from the stress of being alone in this place. But I couldn't. The whispers wouldn't stop. They circled me, weaving in and out of my thoughts, like 1,000 voices echoing through my head. They grew louder, more frantic, until I could no longer tell where the whispers ended and my own thoughts began. My pulse raced. My heart felt like it was hammering against my ribcage. I pressed my hands to my ears, trying to drown them out, but it only made it worse. The shadows seemed to grow darker, thicker, wrapping around me, pulling at my limbs, dragging me deeper into the temple's grip. I couldn't breathe. I needed to get out. The fourth rule, leave before dawn, still echoed in my mind. It felt like a lifeline, a promise of escape, a way out. I had to leave. I had to break free of this place. The exit was close. I could almost feel the door in my hands. Just a few more steps. I was almost there. But the temple knew. The door wouldn't open. I yanked on the handle, desperate, but it didn't budge. The stone was cold beneath my fingers. I pulled harder, but the door was as solid as the walls around me. I could feel the weight of the temple pressing against me, holding me here, trapping me inside. It's not real. It's just a door. But the more I tried, the more real it felt. The temple was alive, I realized. Every part of it was connected, every stone and beam and shadow. It wasn't just a building, it was watching, waiting. And now, it was holding me in place, refusing to let me leave. I stepped back, panting. My vision blurred, my mind scrambled, and the shadows curled closer around me, closing in. I turned around, but every hallway looked the same. Every doorway led me back to where I started. I was stuck in a loop, a never-ending spiral with no way out. The architecture of the temple itself was changing. The once familiar walls seemed to bend, twisting in impossible ways, growing taller, more distorted. The floor beneath me buckled as if the entire structure was alive, shifting and reshaping itself around me. The air was thick with a suffocating weight, and I could feel the walls pressing in from all sides. I reached out, trying to steady myself, but the world seemed to move faster than I could follow. The temple wasn't just a building anymore. It was becoming something else, something alive. I stumbled forward, my legs weak, my head spinning. I couldn't think. The shadows pressed against me, curling around my arms, my legs, pulling me deeper into the heart of the temple. The whispers were louder now, each one like a physical force, dragging me into their madness. I can't stay here. I can't. I have to leave. But every step I took led me further into the maze. The walls seemed to stretch endlessly in front of me, the corridors twisting and warping, impossible to navigate. The shadows danced along the walls, mocking me, pushing me further into this surreal nightmare. I wanted to scream, to break free from the grip the temple had on me. But there was no escape. There was nowhere to go. I pressed my hands to my face, trying to block out the whispers, the sounds, the presence that surrounded me. But they were inside me now, in my head, in my heart, in my very soul. The shadows weren't just physical, they were in my mind, wrapping themselves around my thoughts, pulling them apart. The temple wasn't just holding me, it was consuming me. I have to leave. I tried to force myself to move, to run, to do anything to get away from this nightmare. But the more I fought, the more the temple twisted around me. The walls collapsed inward, the hallways grew narrower, the ceiling seemed to lower until I could barely breathe. I could feel the weight of the building on me, crushing me with every step. I'm going insane. I could feel the edges of my mind unraveling. This isn't real. This can't be real. But the whispers wouldn't stop. The shadows wouldn't leave. The door wouldn't open. And the walls, the temple itself, wasn't just a place. It was a force. A thing that lived, that breathed, that wanted me to stay forever. It's too late. The thought echoed in my mind, growing louder. The more I ran, the further I seemed to get from any exit. The temple was mocking me, drawing me into its depths. And no matter how much I tried to resist, no matter how hard I fought, I was trapped. I reached another corner, another endless hallway, but this time, something was different. The walls didn't just stretch, they twisted into something I couldn't recognize. They were no longer just stone and mortar. They had become something else, something dark and fleshy, like the skin of some great ancient beast. I screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the temple's oppressive silence. The only thing I could hear was the sound of my own breath, fast, shallow, frantic, mingling with the whispers that refused to stop. The temple had consumed me, and I could feel it. The real question now wasn't if I'd get out. It was how much longer I had before it consumed everything inside me. I stumbled through the endless maze of the temple, my mind fraying at the edges. The walls seemed to shift around me with every turn, their angles impossible, their surfaces twisting into shapes I couldn't explain. The shadows no longer just followed me. They chased me. The whispers grew louder, like a cacophony of voices inside my skull, pressing down on my thoughts, suffocating them. I had no idea how long I'd been running. Time didn't make sense here anymore. The minutes felt like hours, hours like seconds. The deeper I went, the more disoriented I became. The temple was no longer just a structure, it was a prison, and I was its prisoner. But then, in a narrow corridor, I saw it. At first, I thought it was just another trick of the temple, a flicker of light, an illusion that would fade when I got closer. But it didn't. It was real. There, hidden in the darkest corner, was a door. A heavy, iron door, half hidden behind a stack of old stones. It wasn't like the other doors in the temple. This one looked different. It felt different. I approached cautiously, every step filled with dread, my pulse pounding in my ears. The whispers grew louder again, but I ignored them. This was my only chance. If there was an answer, it would be here. The door creaked as I pushed it open, revealing a hidden chamber. The air inside was stale, thick with dust, but there was a strange, otherworldly glow that emanated from the walls. Strange symbols were etched into the stone, faintly glowing with a light that was too eerie to be natural. They pulsed softly, like they were alive, like they were waiting. I stepped inside, the air thick with an ancient presence. My heart raced as I scanned the room. In the far corner, a wooden desk stood beneath a cobwebbed arch. A thick, leather-bound journal lay open, its pages yellowed and brittle with age. My breath hitched. This was it. The answers I'd been searching for were right here. I hurried to the desk, my hands trembling as I picked up the journal. The first page was a map detailing the temple's layout in an intricate, almost incomprehensible design. The next pages were filled with sketches, diagrams, and notes, some written in languages I didn't recognize. But it was the final entry that caught my eye, the one scrawled hastily across the last few pages. The ritual. I read the entry aloud, barely able to focus through the haze of fear and confusion. The temple was built to guard something far older than humanity itself, an entity so ancient, so unimaginable, that the very fabric of reality bends around it. The rituals performed here are not to worship, but to protect. The temple does not just shift in space, it manipulates time. Time is the chain that binds this place to the entity within. The rules were established to maintain balance. Those who enter must follow them, for every violation tears a hole in the ritual, weakening the barrier that holds the entity. To break the rules is to invite it closer, to become part of it. Time will loop, the walls will bend, and those who fail will become one with the temple, trapped in an endless cycle. There is no escape. The only way out is through compliance. The only way out is to follow the rules. The temple does not let you leave. Once you are here, you are its. I felt the blood drain from my face as the words sank in. The reality of what I was reading hit me with the force of a tidal wave. The temple, it wasn't just a building, it was a trap, designed to keep something locked away, something ancient and powerful. And I had violated the rules. The temple had already started to claim me, to weave me into its design. I sat back in horror, my mind racing. The whispers in my ears were louder now, more frantic, as if the temple was alive, feeding off my realization. I had broken the rules. I had stepped inside before sunset. I had turned around when I shouldn't have. I had failed to leave before dawn. Each time I'd made the mistake of believing I could control my fate, that I could leave whenever I wanted. But I was wrong. The temple wasn't just a place, it was a living thing, and I had already become part of it. The doors wouldn't open, the walls wouldn't move, the time wouldn't shift. There was no way out, no escape. The temple wasn't just a structure, it was a prison that had been set in place to guard the entity it contained, and now I was trapped in the web of its design. I tried to stand, but my legs felt weak, like I was sinking into the ground. I turned to the door, hoping for a way out, but it was gone. The walls closed in on me, and the shadows thickened around me, wrapping me in their suffocating embrace. The whispers were all around me now, swirling in my ears, louder than ever. You can't leave. You belong to us now. You are part of the temple. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My mind screamed for escape, but I knew it was pointless. I had violated the rules. The temple had already claimed me. The air grew colder, and the chamber began to spin. The walls twisted, bending in impossible ways, just as the journal had described. The inverted architecture of the temple became real in a way that I couldn't escape. The floor tilted beneath me, and I fell, my body weightless as the world around me collapsed in on itself. I could hear the entity now. I could feel it in the very air around me, a presence so ancient, so powerful, it defied description. It didn't need words. It didn't need a body. It was everywhere, inside me. I tried to scream, but my voice was swallowed by the darkness. There was nothing left but the shadows, the whispers, and the cold. My body trembled, not from fear, but from the understanding that there was no longer a distinction between me and the temple. I was part of it now, a piece of its twisted living architecture. And then, in the vast emptiness of the temple, I heard the final inevitable truth echo through my mind. I am no longer a person. I am the temple. The air was colder now, sharper against my skin as the first light of dawn crept through the cracks in the stone. The whispers had died down, replaced by the hum of something deep beneath the earth, a low vibration that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I was running. My legs ached, my chest burned, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't give in, not yet. If I could just reach the exit, if I could just make it through that door, I could leave this nightmare behind. I had found it. At the end of a narrow hallway, an old, rusted iron door stood untouched by the madness that had overtaken the rest of the temple. I approached it cautiously, my heart pounding in my throat. For the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to feel a spark of hope. I reached for the door handle, my hands shaking with a mix of relief and disbelief. It turned. I pushed it open, and the light of dawn flooded the dark hall, a burst of warmth and clarity in the sea of shadows that had enveloped me for so long. I stepped through, ready to breathe free air again. But then, it stopped. The door slammed shut behind me, the sound of metal against stone reverberating through the empty halls. The room I had stepped into was not an exit. It wasn't the outside world at all. It was another corridor, another dead end, another part of the temple. I froze. Number I turned around to find the door was gone. The walls had shifted. The path I had just walked had vanished, replaced with more twisting, inverted hallways. The air was heavier now, as if the temple itself had learned from my attempt to escape. I was trapped. Again. Panic clawed at me, but I couldn't let it take over. I had to think. There must be a way out. There must be. I started running again, my mind racing. Each corner I turned, I came face to face with the same door, the same inverted door I'd just passed through, the same walls that had mocked me before. My thoughts were blurring, and the shadows seemed to stretch longer, closing in on me with each desperate step. I could feel it now. The temple wasn't just a place. It wasn't just an entity. It was watching me. It was playing with me. Every time I tried to find an exit, it shifted, rearranged itself, pulling me deeper into its endless maze. I was in its grip, and no matter how hard I ran, I could never escape. The walls were closing in, and then I heard it. A voice. It came from the darkness, from somewhere far ahead, but it echoed in my ears like it was standing right next to me. A voice that was familiar, but not my own. A voice that chilled me to the bone. You broke the rules. The whisper echoed again, this time sharper, clearer. I stopped, my heart stopping in my chest. The voice seemed to crawl over me, like a tangible presence, like something moving through my blood. Now you belong to us. I turned frantically, searching the shadows. But there was nothing. No one. The darkness was thick, pressing in on me from all sides, swallowing the light, twisting the world around me. I tried to move, to run, but my legs wouldn't carry me forward. I felt stuck. The temple had claimed me. It had won. The shadows seemed to pulsate, to come alive. They stretched out like fingers, reaching for me, surrounding me. The walls pressed closer, the corridors narrowing. Every step I took, every movement I made, the space grew smaller, tighter. The whispers became louder again, a chorus of voices, all saying the same thing. I was part of the temple now. I tried to scream, but the sound was swallowed by the dark. There was nothing left, nothing but the temple, the walls, the shadows, and the oppressive weight of the presence that surrounded me. The door had vanished again. I had failed to escape. I was trapped. Forever. I fell to my knees, breathless, my mind numb with the crushing realization of what I had become. The temple wasn't just keeping me inside. It was changing me. Each time I broke one of its rules, it claimed another part of me. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about becoming part of it, a part of the endless cyclical nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. The last flicker of light from the torch beside me died, and I was left in complete darkness, my mind lost to the shadows. I wasn't just in the temple anymore. The temple was inside me. The last words I hear as the temple swallows me whole are my own, echoing back at me from the endless darkness. You broke the rules. Now you belong to us. The question hangs in the air, unanswered. Is there any way to escape? Or is this just another test of survival?